Hi, my name is Billy Payne. I'm going to be talking about my entry to the one-handed musical instrument competition. It's an adapted violin. It's called the Violaine. There are three main sensors in the violin which generate the sound and the expressivity of the instrument. So the first one is these touch-sensitive pins on the fretboard. They're arranged into two strings. They're velocity sensitive. Gentle touch will get a sort of slower attack, whereas a harder touch will get a harder attack. It'll be slightly louder. You can get glissando on the individual strings. It will slur consecutive notes unless you take your finger off the fingerboard. The main sensor for expressivity is an accelerometer and gyroscope, which sense the movement of the violin. So there's two main functions that performs at the moment. So the first one is to do with the control of the volume of the instrument. So as well as the attack and that you get from the velocity sensitivity of the keys, you also have control over the note once it's played. So if I hold a note down, it will vary depending on the angle I'm holding the violin. So yeah, there we go. And the other main function of the accelerometer and gyroscope in the violin is to control vibrato. So there's two techniques that I've sort of come to for vibrato, which I think would not be acceptable on a normal violin. I'm not a violinist, but the two ways that I've found easiest to do it are sort of as a sort of push. It works on the motion around this sort of axis, the sort of rotation around the axis of the radius of the fingerboard. So if I sort of push down on the note and sort of shake it like that, I get vibrato. You can also sort of do it with your chin as well, which kind of has the side effect of making it look like you're really into the music. But if you sort of shake your head like that, or you can sort of bend the note that way, and get to this. Those are two sort of techniques I've come up with for vibrato. There's probably better ones. I think just as a general point, the way, although it's kind of similar to how you would hold a violin, in terms of sort of supporting the weight, it's quite different. Talking to violinist friends, they said that with a violin you're really supporting everything with your neck and your shoulder, and your hand is supposed to be able to move freely. It's kind of not quite the same because the other neck sensor that I'm going to talk about is this chin rest, which actually plays a part in how you play the instrument. So there's two functions it performs, both to do with the bowing of the instrument. So if I the first one is string selection. So you've only obviously got two strings or two rows of contacts on the fingerboard, but you do have access to four. The reason for that is I thought that two is going to be quite it's going to still give you a little bit of space to manoeuvre, and because these are touch sensitive contacts rather than strings, they're very sensitive to like the slightest touch, so it'd be really easy to trigger notes by accident if they were any more close together. So the way I get around that is in the central position, the neutral position of the chin rest, it'll be the two middle strings that you have, which the D and the A, I think. Again, not a violinist. If you move the chin rest up with your chin like this, it will switch to the lowest two strings and to the highest two strings there. So that allows you to have some space on the fingerboard, but still allows you to do things like double stops and stuff like that. Let's see. Obviously, you've got an indicator light to let you know which two strings you are currently using. So yeah, you've got three positions. The chin rest also functions as another controller for other parameters in your software. So in this case, I'm using a piece of software called Friedlander Violin by Embertone, I think. And that has a feature where you're able to vary where on the string the bow is placed. So you get a different timbre depending on where it's placed. So this is also controlling that. So I've sort of made it so that this is as close to the bow or the expressive bits of the bow as I can. Obviously, there isn't. It's not an actual bow. It doesn't actually trigger the notes. The notes are just triggered by the contacts on the fingerboard. The other thing is in terms of other articulations that I haven't covered already, like so pizzicato is the main one which springs to mind. It can do pizzicato. It doesn't have a control to turn on pizzicato on the violin itself. I felt that would probably be one too many functions to fit onto the violin. I thought any way that I could think of triggering pizzicato would just make the rest of your playing more complicated, because you'd have to avoid, touching this button or triggering this particular type of motion. So what the workaround I've come up with for that is to use MIDI pedals to control those functions on the software. And so that goes for other kinds of articulations as well. So tremolo is one that would be quite tricky to play. You can get quite fast notes on the fingerboard just by pressing down it repeatedly, but it's still not as fast as you could do with a bow. So that's one way you could get around that. And I think that's more or less that, really. So I'm sorry that I haven't played the violin very much. I've only just finished making it in its current form, designed for one. I have previously made other violins, but they've been more aimed at people without physical disabilities or with different kinds of physical disabilities, and they've had fewer notes on the fingerboard and the ability to map to a key. But I felt like it was really important to have a chromatic fingerboard and to have the notes that would be required for a typical violin piece in an orchestra or something like that. So I didn't want to restrict it to just being able to play in one key at a time. I hope I've covered everything. So that's that. Thanks for your consideration.